break down cognitive behavioral therapy. You probably, if you're on social media and you follow me, you will see me talk about cognitive behavioral therapy a lot just because it's my passion. I love it. It makes sense and you can apply it in so many areas. First, I want to break down what cognitive behavioral therapy is. The premise, the foundation of this theory says we have a thought which produces a feeling which produces behaviors. Meaning, because a thought was inserted in my head through mere circumstance, that thought leads to me feeling a certain way. And because I feel a certain way, it's going to impact my behavior. So, let me give an example of cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's say I walk into the cafeteria, I see my friends and they're laughing and they're goofing about, and as soon as I approach the table, they stop talking. What's something I would think? Now, if you were here with me, I'm going to go ahead and give you the number one response I've received. People tend to say, "Oh, they were talking about me. That's what happened." And so then I'll say, "Well, how did they make you feel?" And they may say, "Oh, it makes me feel embarrassed. It makes me feel angry. It makes me feel suspicious." And then I'll say, "Well, what would I do?" And they'll say, "Oh, I'll sit down and I'll ask them point blank, what is it y'all talking about?" Or I'll walk away, or I'll sit down, but I'll just be quiet and I'll kind of sulk a little bit. Let's go back to that scenario. Let's say I go into a cafeteria and I see my friends at a table. They're laughing and goofing about. As soon as I approach the table, they stop talking. I remember tomorrow is my birthday. What's something I would think? Now, the response on this scenario tends to be, "Oh, they're playing my birthday, or they're talking about me and my birthday." And so I'll ask, "Well, how would that make me feel?" And which the response tends to be, "Oh, I'm excited. I'm happy." I'm like, "Yeah." And then I'll respond, "Well, what would I do because I feel that way?" And the response usually is something along the lines of, "Oh, I'll happily sit down at this point, or I'll ask them, 'What you talking about? What you talking about?" But at this point, I'm there, I'm present in the moment, and I tend to be excited. And so what I tend to do at this point is I compare the scenarios, which I'll do with you. What did not change in either scenario is that I walked into the cafeteria. I saw my friends at a table. They were laughing and goofing about. As soon as I approached the table, they stopped talking. In fact, what did not change in either scenario is I thought they were talking about me. However, what changed was what I thought they were talking about when it came to me. In the first scenario, I thought a negative thought. "Oh, they're talking about me. They're being malicious." And so my subsequent feeling was a negative feeling, and my action was negative in the sense that it probably wasn't helpful to me, the situation of the other people. And the second scenario, I thought positive. I thought, "Oh, they're still talking about me, but it's in a good way." And so that impacted my feelings. I felt something that was positive, or I enjoyed the feeling. And so my subsequent reaction was something that was positive, or it helped me, it benefited me, the situation, and the other people. And so this is a classic example of what cognitive behavioral is and the importance of our thoughts. The thing is, when dealing with an offense, this is actually a situation where the person could have gotten offended. In fact, in the first scenario, the person did get offended. And the fact that the response, anytime I pose this question, the response is always the same. "Oh, they're talking about me." I share that in hopes to let you know, again, how many people walking this planet have dealt with offense or currently dealing with offense, because that is their natural response, is they must be talking about me. It's always negative. And so I share that to let you know you alone aren't the only person who may have been offended, and you alone are not alone in dealing with your healing process. There are other people out there who are on their own healing journey. I also post this to you to challenge you to be considerate of your response to other people who you may not realize are going through their own experience with healing and offense. But this is essentially what cognitive behavioral therapy is. I bring this up because I want to talk about some interventions. When it comes to dealing with an outdated narrative, your backstory, and being stuck in a previous offense, I'm going to use this word. I rarely use this word because it tends to have a very aggressive meaning behind it. But when it comes to dealing with an outdated narrative about yourself, you are going to have to confront. You will have to confront the backstory. You're going to have to confront and uproot the negative roots that were sown during your trauma and offense. So if you have your tree, if you think of the tree as you, the tree is your soul, as who you are, kind of even your narrative. Look at the roots. And so like planting and harvesting, whatever seeds are sown is what you'll reap. The same goes for our emotions. If we have roots that are dysfunctional, meaning they're not conducive to our health, you're gonna unfortunately grow fruit, branches, leaves. We can consider these to be the fruit. Whatever seeds are planted is what we're going to harvest. When we have roots of fear and roots of lack of unworthiness and roots of shame, that tends to produce a harvest that manifests in how we interact with other people and how we feel about ourselves. Now that you are here, I pray that you are now committed to the healing journey. Now is to take up your stance and battle. Now is the time to confront and aggressively uproot any negative roots. Now is the time to go back to your backstory and now perceive it in a different lens. What I highly encourage during this time is to go back to that narrative, that backstory, and comb through sentence by sentence everything that happened to you in that offense. Because what you want to do is pull out the lies, pull out the faulty thinking, pull out the distortions. Distortion is a misperceive of faulty thought that we're believing to be true. It's time to pull that out of your backstory. So for example, let's say your backstory is my father abandoned me. And because of that, the root is I have a fear of abandonment. I also have a root of unworthiness because guess what? If my own father didn't love me enough to stay, why would I believe someone else would? That is a true narrative. That's a true backstory. The backstory is your father abandoned you. That I want to say again, acknowledge that. Again, a lot of times when we deal with backstories, we don't want to pay attention to it. We want to brush it under the rug, not understanding that backstory is still playing into your current narrative because we have not acknowledged the impact our father's decision made in our lives. We're taking that into present situations and letting that interact and control the narrative that we have with other people. We push people away or we overengage with people because our father abandoned us. Because we find that we're unworthy, we take every type of love that could be unhealthy because that is the root. There's our backstory. What we do with a backstory is we call in the facts and we narrate it through a correct lens. Another thing I want to factor into with you all is when it comes to your narrative, I will never ask you to lie. Okay, this is not fiction. This is not fairy tale. This is not where you make up a world where you have done everything right and everything's going to work out at the end of the day. No, this is where we pull out truths. This is where we pull out healthy truths at the end of the day because perception is key. And truths involve a level of accountability within ourselves where we focus on things that we can't control. We acknowledge the things that we have done. We're just willing to heal forward, meaning move forward from the event. But it is very critical at this point that we confront the lies head on and we replace the lies with truths. So a technique I love to use from cognitive behavior therapy is called cognitive reframing, where basically we're replacing faulty thinking and misperceptions and distortions with truth. Here's the thing, just because we process our thoughts does not mean we're processing them in a healthy manner. We can process thoughts all day and still actually do ourselves a disservice or be detrimental to our healing process. So what you want to do is not only making sure that you're challenging your thought process, you're calling them out. Anything that's faulty or negative, anything that makes you feel worse about yourself. So let's go back to the example of the parental abandonment. Would be replacing the thought, because my father abandoned me, I feel unworthy. The fact is, our father abandoned us. Unfortunately, we had no say-so in that. The truth of the matter is, we had no say-so in that. That person and their decisions is a reflection of who they were in that period of their lives. It does not reflect who we were. That's when I call confronting your backstory, confronting the narrative and the false belief. We falsely believed that we were unworthy of love just because that person was unable to give us the love that we deserve. That has nothing to do with us. Let's say you have a backstory where you have more of a role to play, where maybe you made a mistake that led to something that was undesirable. The backstory again is the event. We cannot change the event. However, the perception of the event is critical. Let's say you did play a role. It was a divorce, that was part of the dissolution of or separation of a relationship. It may very well be, you know what, back then I made a lot of mistakes. I did things I shouldn't do, but that's not indicative of who I am now. I have grown since then. I have flourished since then. I make different decisions now. And that backstory does not indicate my growth and maturity. And even though I may make mistakes, that does not mean I'm unlovable. So you're pulling out, you're confronting the lies, and it's based on truth. That thought causes me to be able to plant roots and seeds that are healthier for me and more conducive for me, that I may continue to grow forward and heal forward in my healing journey. Now, spiritually speaking, I personally have found me going into the Word of God and me looking to God to tell me who I am has been the most effective thing. And it's been the surefire way for me to counter and confront all the lies that I previously believed by myself due to my backstory as well as other people. Again, I will never ask you to lie. However, I will ask you and challenge you to seek a perception that is still truthful, but paints yourself in gives yourself a better narrative of how you feel about yourself.